Yo les quiero presentar a ustedes a un campeón. I want to present to you a champion. It is my honor to present to you a champion not just for immigrants' rights, but also a champion for working people's rights. Senator Kennedy has dedicated his life.
Gracias por darme la oportunidad de estar en este evento. Y gracias por demandar justicia para todos los inmigrantes. I look across this historic gathering and I see the future of America.
Veo en este encuentro histórico el futuro de América.
As President Kennedy proclaimed a half a century ago, we are a nation of immigrants.
Como dijo el presidente Kennedy hace medio siglo, somos una nación de inmigrantes.
And today, we stand together as brothers and sisters to shape America's destiny.
Y hoy estamos aquí juntos como hermanos y hermanas para dar forma a nuestro destino.
Old Americans, new Americans, and future Americans.
Los americanos de antes, los americanos de ahora y los del futuro.
All joined together for the common good.
Todos juntos para el bien común.
Let me ask you some questions.
Déjeme hacerle algunas preguntas.
Are you ready? Do you have a good job?
¿Tienen trabajos?
Do you love your family?
¿Aman a su familia?
Do you love your community?
¿Aman a su comunidad?
Do you love America?
Y aman América, sí.
You are what this debate is about.
Ustedes representan este debate.
It's about good people who come to America to work.
Se trata de buenas personas que vienen a América a trabajar,
To raise their families,
a criar sus familias,
to contribute to their communities,
a contribuir a las comunidades
and to reach the American dream.
y para alcanzar el sueño americano.
This debate goes to the heart of who we are as Americans.
Este debate está en el corazón de quiénes somos como americanos.
It will determine who can earn the privilege of citizenship.
Decidirá quién va a tener el privilegio de la ciudadanía.
It will determine our strength in separating those who would harm us from those who contribute to our values.
Y determinará cómo vamos a poder separar dividir entre los que quieren hacer daño a este país y los que quieren contribuir a nuestros valores.
It will determine our future progress as a nation and our future economic growth.
Determinará nuestro futuro avance como nación y nuestro crecimiento económico.
Some in Congress want to turn America away from its true spirit.
Algunos de los del Congreso quieren desviar a América de su verdadero espíritu.
They believe immigrants are criminals and they're wrong.
Ellos creen que los inmigrantes son criminales y están equivocados.
They believe any of us who help immigrants, even our priests, are criminals too. They are wrong again.
Creen también que los que ayudan a los inmigrantes son criminales, hasta nuestros sacerdotes, y están equivocados.
They say you should report to deport. I say report and become American citizens.
Ellos quieren que se reportan ustedes para la deportación, pero no, yo digo que se reporten para ser americanos.
More than 4 decades ago, near this place, Martin Luther King called on the nation to let freedom ring.
Hace más de 4 décadas, Martin Luther King hizo un llamado al país para tener libertad.
Freedom did ring, and freedom can ring again.
La libertad sonó en ese entonces y va a volver a sonar hoy.
It's time for Americans to lift their voices now in pride for our immigrant past and in pride for our immigrant future.
Tenemos que levantar nuestras voces con orgullo por nuestro pasado de migrantes y nuestro futuro de migrantes.
We stand for the future.
Representamos el futuro.
We stand for our families.
Estamos aquí por nuestras familias.
We stand for our faith.
Y estamos aquí por nuestra fe.
And I stand with you and you and you and you.
Y yo estoy con ustedes.
Are you with me? Are you with me? John McCain and I have a plan. It's a strong plan. It's a fair plan. It's a plan for America's future.
John McCain, el senador John McCain y yo tenemos un plan. Es un plan fuerte, es un plan justo y es un plan para el futuro de América.
Will you support us? Will you support us? Will you support us? We will never give up.
Nunca nos vamos a rendir.
We will never give in.
Y nunca vamos a ceder.
Hasta la victoria. Sí se puede.
Nosotros
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. My fellow Democrats, my fellow Americans, it is so wonderful to be here. And nothing is going to keep me away from this special gathering tonight. I have come here tonight to stand with you, to change America, to restore its future, to rise to our best ideals, and to elect Barack Obama President of the United States. As I look ahead, I am strengthened by family and friendship. So many of you have been with me in the happiest days and the hardest days. Together we have known success and seen setbacks, victory and defeat. But we have never lost our belief that we are all called to a better country and a newer world. And I pledge to you that I will be there next January on the floor of the United States Senate when we begin the great Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Good. For me, this is a season of hope. New hope for a justice and fair prosperity for the many and not just for the few. New hope. And this is the cause of my life. New hope that we will break the old gridlock and guarantee that every American, north, south, east, west, young, old, will have decent, quality health care as a fundamental right and not a privilege. We can meet these challenges with Barack Obama. Yes, we can, and finally, yes, we will. Barack Obama will close the book on the old politics of race, gender, and group against group, and straight against gay. And Barack Obama will be a commander-in-chief who understands that young Americans in uniform must never be committed to a mistake, but always to a mission worthy of their bravery. We are told that Barack Obama believes too much in an America of high principle and bold endeavor. But when John Kennedy thought of going to the moon, he didn't say, "It's too far to get there. We shouldn't even try." Our people answered his call and rose to the challenge. And today, an American flag still marks the surface of the moon. Yes, we are all Americans. This is what we do. We reach the moon. We scale the heights. I know it. I've seen it. I've lived it. And we can do it again.
Professor Combe, for that generous introduction. And let me say that I never expected to hear such kind words from Dr. Falwell. So in return, I have an invitation of my own. On January 20th, 1985, I hope Dr. Falwell will say a prayer at the inauguration of the next Democratic President of the United States. Now, Dr. Falwell, I'm not sure exactly how you feel about that. You might not appreciate the President, but the Democrats certainly would appreciate the prayer. Actually, a number of people in Washington were surprised that I was invited to speak here, and even more surprised when I accepted the invitation. They seem to think that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a Kennedy to come to the campus of Liberty Baptist College. In honor of our meeting, I have asked Dr. Falwell, as your Chancellor, to permit all the students an extra hour next Saturday night before curfew. And in return, I have promised to watch the old-time gospel hour next Sunday morning. I realize that my visit may be a little controversial, but as many of you have heard, Dr. Falwell recently sent me a membership in the moral majority, and I didn't even apply for it. And I wonder if that means I'm a member in good standing. Somewhat, he says. This is, of course, a non-political speech, which is probably best under the circumstances. Since I'm not a candidate for president, it would certainly be inappropriate to ask for your support in this election, and probably inaccurate to thank you for it in the last one. I have come here to discuss my beliefs about faith and country, tolerance and truth in America. I know we begin with certain disagreements, and I strongly suspect at the end of the evening some of our disagreements will remain. But I also hope that tonight, and in the months and years ahead, we will always respect the right of others to differ, that we will never lose sight of our own fallibility, and that we will view ourselves with a sense of perspective and a sense of humor. After all, in the New Testament, even the disciples had to be taught to look first to the beam in their own eyes and only then to the mote in their neighbor's eyes. I am mindful of that counsel. I am an American and a Catholic. I love my country and treasure my faith. But I do not assume that my conception of patriotism or policy is invariably correct, or that my convictions about religion should command any greater respect than any other faith in this pluralistic society. I believe there surely is such a thing as truth, but who among us can claim a monopoly on it? There are those who do, and their own words testify to their intolerance. For example, because the moral majority has worked with members of different denomination, one fundamentalist group has denounced Dr. Falwell for hastening the ecumenical church and for yoking together with Roman Catholics, Mormons, and others. I am relieved that Dr. Falwell does not regard that as a sin, and on this issue, he himself has become the target of narrow prejudice. When people agree on public policy, they ought to be able to work together even while they worship in diverse ways. For truly we are all yoked together as Americans. And the yoke is the happy one of individual freedom and mutual respect. But in saying that, we cannot and should not turn aside from a deeper and more pressing question, which is whether and how religion should influence government. A generation ago, a presidential candidate had to prove his independence of undue religious influence in public life, and he had to do so partly at the insistence of the evangelical Protestants. John Kennedy said at that time, "I believe in an America where there is no religious bloc voting of any kind." Only 20 years later, another candidate was appealing to an evangelical meeting as a religious bloc. Ronald Reagan said to 15,000 evangelicals at the Round Table in Dallas, "I know that you can't endorse me. I want you to know I endorse you and what you are doing." To many Americans, that pledge was a sign and a symbol of a dangerous breakdown in the separation of church and state. Yet this principle, as vital as it is not a simplistic and rigid command. Separation of church and state cannot mean an absolute separation between moral principles and political power. The challenge today is to recall the origin of the principle, to define its purpose and refine its application to the politics of the present. The founders of our nation had long and bitter experience with the state as both the agent and the adversary of particular religious views. In colonial Maryland, Catholics paid a double land tax, and in Pennsylvania, they had to list their names on a public roll, an ominous precursor to the first Nazi laws against the Jews. And Jews, in turn, faced discrimination in all of the 13 original colonies. Massachusetts exiled Roger Williams and his congregation for contending that civil government had no right to enforce the Ten Commandments. Virginia harassed Baptist teachers and also established a religious test for public service, writing into the law that no popish followers could hold any office. But during the Revolution, Catholics, Jews, and nonconformists all rallied to the cause and fought valiantly for the American Commonwealth, for John Winthrop's city upon a hill. Afterwards, when the Constitution was ratified and then amended, the framers gave freedom for all religion, and from any established religion, the very first place in the Bill of Rights. Indeed, the framers themselves professed very different faiths. Washington was an Episcopalian, Jefferson a deist, and Adams a Calvinist. And although he had earlier opposed toleration, John Adams later contributed to the building of Catholic churches, and so did George Washington. Thomas Jefferson said his proudest achievement was not the presidency or the writing of the Declaration of Independence, but drafting the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. He stated the vision of the first Americans and the First Amendment very clearly. The God who gave us life gave us liberty at the same time. The separation of church and state can sometimes be frustrating.
This is a wonderful day. For all of our country and all Americans who will now have a chance and the opportunity to give back to their communities and the nation that we love so much. Special thanks to Barbara Mikulski, who gave her heart. Barbara Mikulski, who gave her heart and incredible leadership to bring us here today. And Orrin Hatch, our partner from the beginning. Who helped us from the beginning and who helped us win our broad and wide and bipartisan support. To Senator Mike Enzi, to Chairman Miller, Congressman McKeon, and all champions for our cause, we thank you. And a very special thank you to all who served. This bill was forged for you and by you. I will never forget the 5th anniversary of the Peace Corps, where I sat with the very first group of volunteers. I asked each of them why they decided to become involved, and they said, it was the first time that anyone asked them to do anything for their country. Today, another young president has challenged another generation to give back to this nation. Last spring at Wesleyan University, candidate Barack Obama summoned our nation to a new era of service. He said, I believe with all my heart that this generation is ready and eager and up to the challenge. Mr. President, I couldn't agree more. Don't you? You have inspired a new generation of Americans, and your own example and your own call recognizes that. You have walked the walk, and today you have paved it for many, many others. I'm deeply honored to introduce him now, my friend, our leader, the President of the United States. Honored to have the chance to introduce you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Good. For me, this is a season of hope. New hope for a justice and fair prosperity for the many and not just for the few. New hope. And this is the cause of my life. New hope that we will break the old gridlock and guarantee that every American, north, south, east, west, young, old, will have decent, quality health care as a fundamental right and not a privilege. We can meet these challenges with Barack Obama. Yes, we can, and finally, yes, we will. Barack Obama will close the book on the old politics of race, gender and group against group and straight against gay. And Barack Obama will be a commander-in-chief who understands that young Americans in uniform must never be committed to a mistake, but always to a mission worthy of their bravery. We are told that Barack Obama believes too much in an America of high principle and bold endeavor. But when John Kennedy thought of going to the moon, he didn't say, "It's too far to get there. We shouldn't even try." Our people answered his call and rose to the challenge. And today, an American flag still marks the surface of the moon. Yes, we are all Americans. This is what we do. We reach the moon. We scale the heights. I know it. I've seen it. I've lived it. And we can do it again. There is a new wave of change all around us, and if we set our compass true, we will reach our destination. Not merely victory for our party, but renewal for our nation. And this November, the torch will be passed again to a new generation of Americans. So with Barack Obama, and for you and for me, our country will be committed to his cause. The work begins anew. The hope rises again. And the dream lives on.
Karl Marx. I am afraid he has confused Karl Marx with Theodore Roosevelt. That obscure Republican president who sought and fought for a tax system based on ability to pay. Theodore Roosevelt was not Karl Marx, and the Republican tax scheme is not tax reform. Finally, we cannot have a fair prosperity in isolation from a fair society. So I will continue to stand for a national health insurance. We must not surrender. We must not surrender to the relentless medical inflation that can bankrupt almost anyone and that may soon break the budgets of government at every level. Let us insist on real controls over what doctors and hospitals can charge, and let us resolve that the state of a family's health shall never depend on the size of a family's wealth. The President, the Vice President, the members of Congress have a medical plan that meets their needs in full. And whenever senators and representatives catch a little cold, the Capitol physician will see them immediately, treat them promptly, fill a prescription on the spot,
We do not get a bill even if we ask for it. And when do you think was the last time a member of Congress asked for a bill from the federal government? And I say again, as I have before, if health insurance is good enough for the President, the Vice President, the Congress of the United States, then it's good enough for you and every family in America. There were some who said we should be silent about our differences on issues during this convention. But the heritage of the Democratic Party has been a history of democracy. We fight hard because we care deeply about our principles and purposes. We did not flee this struggle. We welcome the contrast with the empty and expedient spectacle last month in Detroit, where no nomination was contested, no question was debated, and no one dared to raise any doubt or dissent. Democrats can be proud that we chose a different course and a different platform. We can be proud that our party stands for investment in safe energy instead of a nuclear future that may threaten the future itself. We must not permit the neighborhoods of America to be permanently shadowed by the fear of another 3 Mile Island. We can be proud that our party stands for a fair housing law to unlock the doors of discrimination once and for all. The American House will be divided against itself so long as there is prejudice against any American buying or renting a home. And we can be proud that our party stands plainly and publicly and persistently for the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Women hold their rightful place at our convention, and women must have their rightful place in the Constitution of the United States. On this issue, we will not yield, we will not equivocate, we will not rationalize, explain, or excuse. We will stand for ERA and for the recognition at long last that our nation was made up of founding mothers as well as founding fathers. A fair prosperity and a just society are within our vision and our grasp, and we do not have every answer. There are questions not yet asked, waiting for us in the recesses of the future. But of this much we can be certain, because it is the lesson of all of our history. Together, a president and the people can make a difference. I have found that faith still alive wherever I have traveled across this land. So let us reject the counsel of retreat and the call to reaction. Let us go forward in the knowledge that history only helps those who help themselves. There will be setbacks and sacrifices in the years ahead, but I am convinced that we as a people are ready to give something back to our country in return for all it has given to us. Let this be our commitment. Whatever sacrifices must be made will be shared and shared fairly. And let this be our confidence. At the end of our journey, and always before us, shines that ideal of liberty and justice for all. In closing, let me say a few words to all those that I have met and to all those who have supported me at this convention and across the country. There were hard hours on our journey, and often we sailed against the wind. But always we kept our rudder true, and there were so many of you who stayed the course and shared our hope. You gave your help, but even more, you gave your hearts. And because of you, this has been a happy campaign. You welcomed Joan, me, and our family into your homes and neighborhoods, your churches, your campuses, your union halls. And when I think back of all the miles and all the months and all the memories, I think of you. And I recall the poet's words, and I say, what golden friends I had.